Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Well, hello, Aki.
Well, hello, Stevie. How art thou?
Thou art more wondrous than a blazing sun.
Oh,
Is that
the bud. Yeah,
I
sure.
tried. Is that true?
Wow.
Is that a real line?
I don't think "Been a blazing sun" is the line, but it could be.
I tried.
Really know.
I could have gotten away with it.
Was that
In
a sonnet or was that Romeo and Juliet?
It's a sonnet. Thou art more lovely than a summer's rose or something. No.
Sure, man.
Look how off track we've gotten within 20 seconds.
This is not our Shakespeare podcast? Oh,
No.
this is our Star Trek podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, welcome in everyone to the program. This is Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast. And today we're discussing Picard Season 2, Episodes 5 and 6. Episodes 5 and 6, entitled Fly Me to the Moon.
Shortchanging you.
Yeah.
No shortchanging here.
We don't shortchange you. If anything, we give you more than you bargained for. You bargained and you're still getting more. Yeah, they're entitled Fly Me to the Moon and 2 of 1. Respectively. And today's stardate is stardate 225415.1. Listen, before we jump into the rundown where I start to sweat, I want to throw it to you, Stevie, to talk about the Patreon.
The thing that I talk about.
The Patreon.
Yes. Well, we have a Patreon. If we don't tell you enough, but we do, and we would love for you to be part of our community where we can be Star Trek nerds together. Star Trek nerds unite. Patreon.com/setphasers. You can join us for early access video episodes. What else? Oh, Zoom hangs. And cooking shows with Aki. It's always fun. Oh, and we might even do a book club soon, because I just started reading Brent Spiner's fan fiction novel.
What's this? Book club business? Okay,
Yeah,
pretty cool.
doing all sorts. Join us for the fun at patreon.com/setphasers and become friends with us, because we need more.
We need
friends. Yeah.
We need friends.
And more Star Trek friends. That's genuinely something that I value in my life, is people that get Star Trek.
Yes, and if you're a patron right now, you'd be watching the video. You'd see my sweet Skippy shirt. Skippy, which is
a walking advert for Skippy.
I am, but I'm not walking anywhere. I'm running down.
Oh,
hey!
Oh, sweet transition. Let's run it down.
It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me? Oh, hello, listener. Meet Renee Picard. Hold on. Meet Renee Picard, piloting the Shango rocket, talking to mission control. However, all is not well, for there's some sort of crumbling Russian satellite that's headed towards the Shango rocket, and Renee Picard is trying to fix it, but it's not working out. And eventually mission control says, it's too late, you can't do anything about it, brace for impact. There's an impact, and then we find out that it's a simulation. Mission control says, boom, you're dead. And Renee is extremely frustrated, very mad. Feels like everything is stuck. And mission control is like, hey, it's just jitters. I'm sure you'll be fine. Now, back to Picard in the apartment of the Watcher. Remember, we met the Watcher, who we thought was Laris in the last episode. But it turns out this Watcher, yes, looks exactly like Laris. Doesn't have an accent, notably. and
Because
but
your
does not.
Irish mind.
Okay, she might have an. You're right. It's true. But I think I was like making sure she wasn't Irish.
No, she had she was an Irish person doing an American accent badly, almost as badly as you doing an Irish accent.
Yeah, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with American accents are so weird and strange that there's no way to tell if someone's faking really because
That's true.
we speak so weirdly across the country. In any case, it's not Laris, it's Talinn. Talinn, the Watcher. And Picard's like, hey, listen, you're the Watcher. I'm from the future. And she's like, I don't like time travel. And she's like, no, listen, but I'm Jean-Luc Picard. And she's like, what? And he's like, what do you do? And she's like, listen, I'm a Watcher. Our job is to protect one individual. We don't know why we're protecting them. We just know that we have to protect them. She describes it as, quote, a single thread in a grand tapestry to which I am not privy. Picard explains that he's just come from a bad future and that the bad future is a future that was not supposed to happen and something's going to happen now that causes the future to fragment and go into this bad place. And that's when he says that he's Jean-Luc Picard, and that's when Talon reveals that who's she watching? None other than Renee Picard, who we saw in our cold open. Meanwhile, on board La Sirena, the Borg Queen is awake. She's muttering to herself about being alone because she doesn't have any voices, but she's able to tap into the local cell tower frequencies, and she gets some relief. It's sort of like she sinks herself into a hot bath. She's like, all these voices. It's kind of like being in the Borg, I guess. She then gets a bright idea. No one's watching her. And using mimicry of the voices of the crew is eventually falling on Rios's voice, is able to gain access enough to intercept the cell towers and makes a call to the local police station saying that there's a woman under attack in the vineyard. And the police say they'll be right on their way. Meanwhile, Seven and Rafi have to spring Rios' crystal ball. Seven has to talk Rafi down from basically just hard transporting him out and breaking all the time travel rules. Rafi's super upset that Seven is acting so rationally, so safely, but Seven understands that Rafi is upset about Elnor and perhaps also her son Gabe, but she's able to talk Rafi down. She gets Rafi to give her the tricorder and says, I know that you're angry, you need a target. And Rafi's like, yeah, I need a target. And then Seven uses the tricorder to create, I think, an electromagnetic pulse, which disables the bus and says, yeah, well, something that's not moving is a much more vulnerable target. The bus breaks down. Rios on the bus realizes what's going on. He's like, yeah, that's my people. He starts telling everyone in Spanish who's being detained by ICE. He's like, hey, get ready. Something's about to happen. The guy he was with before is like, hey, don't do anything stupid. And he's like, my friends have already taken care of that. Meanwhile, the ICE officer that was tormenting them earlier is pretty jumpy. He doesn't want them talking. He opens the gate to confront Rios. Rios attacks him and pushes him forward, and the other guy that he was talking to, the other prisoner, manages to knock that guard out. The driver pulls his weapon, but Rafi opens the door and stuns him. Then Seven, Rafi, and Rios get everyone off the bus because they realize people start wondering what's going on with this bus. Why has it disappeared off the grid? And so they're getting everyone to escape. Rafi has a moment where she thinks she sees Elnor, and she runs after one of the prisoners, and they turn around. It's not Elnor, so she's going through that kind of grief process. Rios says goodbye to the other prisoner, whose name is Pedro, thanks him for helping knock out the guard with the sweet Star Trek two-handed punch, which means basically I think he immediately gets 4 pips. And he then goes away with Rafi and Seven. Yeah, only captains can do the two-handed punch. Picard is asking Talon about her job. He learns all about Renee. Renee is super smart. She's 24 years old. She grew up in the south of France as a Picard. She was sailing on her own by the age of 10, moved on to chess, fluid dynamics, and Cantonese. She was in university at the age of 16, then became a test pilot for a few years, and then NASA couldn't wait to get their hands on her. However, she also struggles from melancholy, anxiety, and depression. So these are things that she struggles with. She is to be on the Europa mission, which will launch in 3 days. It's the first manned mission to the Jovian moon, I assume, of the same name. And Picard only knows that it is a pioneering flight. To illustrate what Renee is going through and how, her certainty of her being on that flight may be in question, Talon taps into her meeting with her therapist, which Picard is horrified by, but Talon completely shrugs off because that's what her job is to do as a watcher. The therapist, who is like a kindly old man with a German accent, encourages her to go easy on herself. Maybe the fear that she's experiencing, the nerves, mean that she's simply not ready for the Europa mission. There's nothing wrong with that. And Renee admits to those feelings. He's like, these panicky moments where she goes numb and feels like nothing matters. And the therapist says, hey, fear need not be an enemy, which of course sets Picard completely on edge. And he says, I need to get an angle on that therapist. Well, guess who the kindly old German therapist is? It's none other than Q with a weird hair. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
That didn't work.
It's Q. How could things possibly get worse? Meet Adam Soong. He's talking to some board about his understanding of the human genome. He's going off about, imagine I'm a god looking down at humanity at a crossroads. I want to unlock human perfection, blah, 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 blah. The chairman of the board is like, wait a second, dig this, honey bun. You have been working for a private military organization called Spearhead, and that puts Soong on the defensive. He says, well, Spearhead was ex-military. It's not real soldiers. And I was doing it for the greater good. And my daughter suffers from a genetic defect that is making her unable to inhale dust or be exposed to sunlight. True sunlight is poison. And the chair says, listen, that's too bad. It doesn't matter, though, because you've broken the Shenzhen Convention, and we have no option but to revoke your license and your funding.
And nota bene, Leah Thompson.
Yes.
Leah Thompson.
Oh, is the chairperson?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who directed was it the previous or like whatever? Yeah. Directed an episode about time travel. The irony.
Also, Soong is no longer to do any more experiments on genetics. No more research. Soong returns home angry, goes through some sort of decontamination process or whatever. We meet his daughter, Corey, who looks a lot like Soji. When I say I mean exactly like it's the same actor. So whatever. Yes. He explains that he failed in the meeting, things didn't go well. She's like, oh, that's too bad. You didn't give that weird speech about being a god looking at the crossroads. And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. People are so stupid. And one day, when you're able to go out there, you're going to see just how stupid people are. And she's like, oh, what day is one day? And he's like, soon, I'm working on it. I'm doing my best. He takes a little blood from her. She goes back to her hyperbaric living chamber or whatever. And he does some research on the blood, and looks like he's not close at all. It's like 98% chance that she would be killed by ultraviolet lights or dust or whatever. As he is full of sadness. Whoa. The echo just came back super strong.
I haven't done a damn thing.
So weird.
I'll go on mute.
Check. And it's gone. So strange. Didn't sound like what? Doesn't matter. Okay. As he is falling into a pit of despair that he can't save his daughter, boo-hoo-hoo, he gets a message on his screen. I can help. And then a bunch of research flashes across the screen. He's told to check his 3D printer. Turns around, looks at it. It's a card for Q and a number. Meanwhile, at the chateau, the French officer shows up. Girardi is asleep, so she doesn't know that he's there, and he doesn't know that she's there. But as he's looking around with his flashlight, he sees the poorly cloaked ship in the yard. He goes out to it. He gets on board. He's freaking out. He's like, this is not even possible. The queen is able to lure him up close by using a young woman's voice in distress, saying they'll come back soon. And then as he gets there, she goes, I can use you. And a tentacle comes out and lashes at him. Meanwhile, Soong meets Q at the diner. Q is very evasive in his explanation of who he is. He's like, I am the shadow of the darkness of the window on the wall, the light that reflects off the glinting of the diamonds in the patch of grave dirt. I am the world's worst chicken wrangler. He just says a lot of Q-y stuff. And then he's like, but I know who you are, Soong, and I'm a real respecter of your art. And I want to help you do things. And Q's like, listen, I don't like crackpots, and everyone contacts me for all kinds of crackpot things. And And Q's like, you're going to sit down in 17 seconds because you're a father and you're trying to save your daughter, and I know how you can do it. And so Soong sits down. He's like, what's up? And he's like, listen, I'm just here to tell you I want to support what you can do. You don't have enough time to or money to save your daughter, but I can help you. And Soong's like, what do you want? And he goes, what do I want? Ha 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 ha. I want to give you this weird blue vial of medicine. You go take a look at that, test it, see what it does. And then when you've used it, you tell me what then we'll talk about what I want, rather, is what he says. Meanwhile, Talinn and Picard are still talking in the apartment. They're drinking tea now. All right. And Talon's like, why didn't Q just snap his fingers as if he's as powerful as you say and just make the Europa mission not work? And Picard says he doesn't know, but he is trying to convince Talon that they need to help keep Q from talking Renee out of the mission. There's something there, something in that. It's 3 days to the mission. It's 3 days to the 15th of April. That's what they figured out with Jurati, what she took from the Queen's mind. This is all coming together. Talon reveals that there is a big gala tonight, and then the astronauts will go into their quarantine before they get on the flight. So this is sort of the last opportunity for anyone to sort of it'll be really hard to get off the flight once you're in quarantine. Like you're kind of just like rolling downhill there. So tonight's the last night to sort of interfere and try to get Renee off of the mission. And Picard is like, well, then we go to the gala. We keep an eye on Renee. We protect her. We run interference, and we make sure she doesn't get talked out of going on the mission. Meanwhile, at the chateau, the Queen, gently using the speakers on the outside of the ship, wakes Jurati up and says, I don't want to start without you. Jurati immediately knows something is very, very wrong. She gets up off the couch she was sleeping on, sees a shotgun or musket or something on the shelf. I don't know, from guns. She grabs it. She goes onto the ship. She sees the Queen has the officer held up by his neck and the tentacles. And the Queen tries to seduce Jurati. She's like, you could help this guy if you just help me. You'd never be alone. I've seen it. You're alone in every timeline. You're so sad, but you mean nothing to anyone, but not to me. To me, you're everything. Just typical manipulator bullshit. And says they could go and be together, and the doctor would be completely loved and heard and shared. And Doc raises the gun, and the Queen's like, you won't do it. You need me. And then we have a close-up on Jurati as she pulls the trigger. But what happened there, we won't know for a while. Soong, meanwhile, analyzes Q's vial. The computer shows that it's 100% effective. He gives it to Corey. It works. He's able to take away the drone things. She can get sunlight. She jumps in the pool. She's swimming around. She's so happy. She's not really good at swimming. She's like, was my mother a good swimmer? And Soong says, she swam like a duck, which, you know what? When I first listened to the episode, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's cute. But then I realized what he probably meant was that he used like duck DNA to in Corey or whatever. I don't know. That's what I thought as I was watching it the second time for quotes. He tells Corey she's got to be patient. She's like a couple decades behind everyone else. As they're talking about that and Corey gets out of the pool, the medicine abruptly stops working. The sunlight turns to poison. The sunlight turns to poison, and she falls to the ground with her veins going all dark, and she's coughing and she can't breathe. And so he frantically gets the shield back in place, and he's looking at her, and we assume that she saves her, but we can see the panic on Adam Soong's face. Meanwhile, Rio, Seven, and Rafi get back to La Sirena. They see Jurati covered in blood. She's like, don't worry, not my blood, but she's in a state of shock. The Queen has been shot dead. She's like, ooh, I may have ruined our one way to get back home. And the officer is unconscious on the sickbay table. Jurati says she was able to fix most of his organs, but his spleen is in a box nearby. She erased his memory of the event, but they need to get him back to his car before he wakes up. And as they're trying to drag the body out of the ship and back to the car of this police officer, that's when Picard shows up with Talon. And Talon's like, this is your crew dragging this dead police officer. And Picard's like, he's probably not dead. Then in Q's lab, in Soong's lab, we see Q. And Soong is like, okay, the medicine worked, and if you have more of it and a way to make it permanent, then I am completely under your control. What do you need from me? And Q's asks Soong. Q asks Soong if the name Picard means anything to him. Giggles to himself. Back on La Sirena, the crew meets Talon, who shows them the Q therapist. Picard explains that not much is known of Renee Picard because the century leading up to first contact is sort of a chaotic. The histories are not quite complete. What they do know is that the Renee is supposed to discover a sentient or an organism she thinks is sentient on Io, which is I think it's another moon of Jupiter. So I guess they're going to multiple moons. And she convinces her commander to bring it back to Earth. And we don't know what significance that has, but it probably has some sort of significance. And he explains his plan. They're going to crash the gala and they're going to run interference. Talon explains there is one little glitch that maybe means we're going to have to do a sweet, sweet heist episode. Basically, there's a security thing. You need to have like this radio badge that's like an ID and tells your whole life story in order to even get into the thing. But security is air gapped, so it can't be hacked from the outside. So they need someone to go in and then get to the main computer and then upload the fake things. Also, you know what I'm saying. Jurati volunteers to do it. To go in and hack it. Rios is a little worried because they have, you know, Fenris Ranger and like Super Spy. But Picard's like, I think Jurati can do this. She's the one. She's got everything we need. Plus, I have a cunning plan. Yeah, that's right. Jurati goes in as Holly Visser in a stunning red dress. She gets in, she claps eyes on Renee Picard. She's talking to herself at a table. She reports to the crew that she's inside. She gets picked up immediately by security, who escort her away and handcuff her to a chair in the security room. But it was all part of the plan. She's able to report that she's inside. Picard says, okay, we're waiting for your signal. Jurati thinks on her confrontation with the dying queen. She has a little bit of a flashback. She's got this sort of feeling bad. And the queen is saying, oh, I can't believe you did this. You need me. We need each other. We could be so much more together. Plus, you need me to get home. And Jurati's like, no, I don't need you. And we're nothing together. There's no us. But Jurati gets very close. And the queen reaches out and puts a hand on her face. And the weird assimilation threads come out of her fingers and go into Jurati's face. And she's totally inside Jurati's brain. Good. Dang it. Is Jurati going to have another alien-influenced psychotic whatever the what? As she, you know, whatever. Okay. In the security room, the queen appears next to Jurati and says, oh, captured on purpose. Clever little plan. And that is the end of episode 5. Fly me to the moon.
Woo!
Woo! Crazy pants. But we're not done yet because we're going right into episode 6. Right? We begin. I thought I had hit the wrong button because Picard is bleeding on the ground. It's the first thing you see, covered in blood, and the crew is freaking out over him. And Picard is flashing back to his mother in the darkness. And I was like, oh, I definitely missed a whole episode. But no, I had not, because then we get the boom, 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 fly me to the moon. 34 minutes later, Picard dressed in a tuxedo, ready for the Europa Gala event. He's trying to play it cool with Talon about Laris, but she knows he's lying, and that doesn't matter. Picard calls on Jurati again, saying, hey, we're in position on the line, and we're about to get, I don't know why I'm dancing while I do this, but, you know, it's the vibe. We're in line, and we're about to be scanned in. The dock is still in security with the queen in her head. She's able to knock out the guards with a little gas from some sort of thing on her leg, like a little capsule or something. However, she knocked them out, and she is still locked into the chair. And the chair is actually 3 different chairs. It's like one of those chairs that's 3 metal chairs all together. And so she's unable to break her chains. And the queen's like, you should have probably knocked them out after you'd gotten the keys, because the keys are in the guard's pocket. Rios, meanwhile, is about to check in. He gets scanned. It does not go through. Things are about to fall incredibly apart. Picard's like, hey, anytime now, we're in position. The queen, seeing Jurati still struggling, says, hey, you know, I could help if you just let me. Jurati struggles, but then relents. And when told to pull, she pulls her hands together, breaks the chains, no problem. Gets the module in the computer just in time for Rios' second check-in attempt, and the rest of them all get in. The queen at the end says, well, that was pretty fun. Now, shall we enjoy the rest of our evening? And she puts out her hand. And this is the moment. This is the crux. This is the time when Jurati has... But no, she hesitates, but then puts her hand in the queen's, and they go into the party. Flashback to Picard on a hospital bed. Dreaming of his mother and stuff. And I don't know, it's crazy images, like her getting dragged through a door. It's like a horror thing. If we're going horror, somebody better let me know, because I don't handle it well. Meanwhile, 26 months earlier... Team is in the party. Rio, Seven, and Rafi at the bar doing what they do. Picard is with Talon at a table. They're watching Renee. She's drinking and looking at video, and then she gets called over by the mission commander, whose name is, I wrote must, but I know I meant Musa, for photos. She knocks back a drink, and she goes up there, and she's kind of smiling. Picard's like, well, okay, well, things are not going terrible, right? This is like so far so good. But Talon is less sure. She says Renee has a thing when she's about to like have one of her like downturn sort of spirals, she rubs her ear. And they haven't seen her do that. But Picard learns that Talon has never actually interacted with Renee in the 24 years that she's been watching her. And Talon says that is the code that watchers live by. Picard wonders then, who watches the watcher? I'm a wheel watcher. Girardi is alone at a table, but the queen is in her mind saying like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to, Girardi's like, there is no way. I just did this because it was the only thing I could do. And I needed you to get us home. And I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with you until I can get you out of my brain. But the queen's like, okay, whatever. But I just think we could have a good time tonight. Whatever, you're looking good. You're stunning here at this party. It's beautiful. You've done what you need to do. Girardi's like, no, I'm on a mission. And the queen says, well, these stress hormones are not good for us. Maybe we should do something. But hey, you're in control, Girardi. You're in control. Rafi, meanwhile, is at the bar. She gets a club soda because, as we know, Rafi is a recovering addict of sorts. Rios comes over, and Rios is super gleeful. He's like, look, I found a cigar, and they use matches in this century in a little box. It's crazy, a little house for their matches. And Rafi's concerned about Rios's euphoria. And Rios says, well, the 21st century is super intense. It's very loud and smoky and smelly, but it's the intensity is kind of interesting. And Rafi notes that Rios has been smiling very goofily since being locked up with that doctor in the ICE detention center, Teresa Ramirez. And she warns him not to get smitten. Then they both see Seven as once again being super social. Everyone's into Seven. And Rafi's sort of glad that Seven is able to enjoy herself. She describes, the Borg implants as being a heavy burden to bear, and she's glad to see Seven is able to travel light for a while. And then she has a hallucination of Elnor again and grows worried. Meanwhile, Renee is back at the bar. She knocks back another drink. Picard's like, she always drink like this? And Talon's like, she looks at her phone and does the ear touchy thing. So Talon is concerned. She intercepts the communication of the phone, finds out that she's talking to her therapist, texting with them. And, there was a funny moment where Picard says she's looking at her phone all the time. And Talon says, that's what we all do at this time, which was cute. And Talon intercepts communications, curses in Romulan, nota bene. And sees that Renee is planning to tell Musa that she simply cannot do the mission. She's like, I'm going to back out. I'm going to tell him I can't do it and just leave. And the therapist is encouraging her. And Picard says, that's it. It's time to intervene. Talon is reluctant. Picard is like, it's time to do this thing. You got to learn to let go. You're the watcher. Maybe your code, but you've watched her for 24 years, and now's the time for her to fulfill her destiny. Talon's like, okay, well, in order to do that, we sort of need to get Musa out of the way so that she can't talk to him and talk her way out of the mission. And Picard's like, all right, we'll get Girardi to go talk to Musa because they're like, birds of a pair. However, Girardi does not respond to hails. Girardi comes into the party once again after having been away for some time. Apparently, she needed a little break, and the Queen asks if she feels better. She orders a champagne at the bar. She's drinking it. Rios approaches, and he's like, hey, is your comm on? Picard is trying to call you. And she's like, oh, I must have turned it off or something. And he's like, hey, Girardi, I know you've been through a lot in the last couple hours. And, everything, the Queen, and it's a tough time for all of us. And Girardi's like, oh, it's so cute. You're doing that thing you do with your eyebrows when you're worried about me. And Rios is like, yeah, I am worried about you. So seriously, are you okay? And then they stare at each other for a moment. And the Queen rolls her eyes and is like, ugh, allow me. And takes over Girardi's body briefly and has her passionately, most ardently kiss Rios upon the lips. Rios is shocked. And he's like, that is not what I was talking about. And Girardi's like, oh, yeah, of course. But yeah, my bad. I'm just not myself at the moment. And then she sort of walks away speedily. But so she's not in the game. Renee, meanwhile, has another drink, nods to herself, and walks determinedly away. Picard says, okay, we can't wait for Girardi. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to go talk to her right now. Talon's like, what are you going to say? He says, I don't know what I'm going to say, but something will come up to me. As he's trying to follow Renee Picard, he runs into Adam Soong, who has a menacing conversation with him, mentions their mutual quote-unquote friend, Q. Picard tells him to stay away from Q and to stay out of his way. He has no idea what he's dealing with, and then Soong says, you have no idea who you're dealing with, my friend. Soong gets approached by another guest, and he's sick security. And he's sick security. See? By accident, I can do it. He gets approached by another guest, and he six security on Picard. He six security on Picard, and the security guards begin to close on him very calmly, sort of like blocking off his thing. Picard is in trouble. The exits are blocked. Renee is about to leave the party, possibly for good. The Queen turns to Jurati and says, hey, you want to help? Your friends need a distraction. She sets off some sort of weird pulse. It knocks out all the lights. Picard is able to skip away and contact Rios, and they give him a badge, like a weird security name pin. Then Jurati emerges from one of the high balconies, somehow having run up the stairs, and begins singing a cappella, a song that the internet tells me is called Shadows of the Night. And then the band picks up her tune and they start playing along, and it's a big number. She walks down the stairs in her red dress, all Jessica Rabbit in her way through the crowd, gets up on stage. There's, the band's super into it. Big final hit, the number, and the crowd goes absolutely wild. They're super into it. There's bowing and stuff. And apparently that is precisely the endorphin kick that the Queen needed in order to take over and, quote, steer the ship for a while. And so we see Jurati's eyes go Borg taken over black and then back to normal, and now we know the Queen is in control of Agnes Jurati. Meanwhile, Picard catches up with Renee. He is able to get her to start talking. She's like, you're pretty old for a security guard. He's like, yeah, I'm old, but I got a lot of wisdom, huh? Anyway, tell me about that ship, because she's like kind of freaking out. She's crying. She's definitely in like a panic attack mode. And he's like, tell me about the ship. And she mentions some of the ships in the room. And then he gets her talking about how she feels, and she's like, well, I'm just so afraid, and I feel like fear is something you got to listen to. It might be an indicator that you're not ready. And Picard tells her, no, fear is fear. It's neutral. Everyone feels fear. Fear means that you're smart and you're intuitive, and you know that there's something to be afraid of, and you're aware of that. There's nothing wrong about that. And then Renee's like, what about the dark times? Since I feel so dark, I feel so sad, like nothing matters. Picard says, he does also say, when he says he's the old security guard, that she reminds him of his mother, who was also loved the stars and also struggled internally. And Picard tells her that even under the darkest circumstances, there is always a glimmer of light. To trust that light and to find a way back to it, no matter what it takes. And some other things happen in the conversation. Anyway, he's super reassuring Grandpa Picard. It works out super well on his great grandmother, Renee Picard, and she's
great aunt, wasn't it?
Great aunt, yes, I think so. And then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I was sent by what's his tush to get you to come do a photo for all the people that are going to be on the mission. Are you going to be on the mission? And she looks at him and she says, I will be on the mission. He's like, well, let's get you to that photo. Meanwhile, Soong is in his car. He's upset. He's trying to pump himself up. He's like, I'm ready to deal with Q to get this obstacle out of the way. I got to do what must be done. I can't hesitate. Meanwhile, Picard is walking with Renee around the outside of the building because it's the quickest way to get through the crowd to get her back to the main stage. That's when Soong speeds towards them in his car, and he's about to knock into Renee, but Picard pushes Renee out of the way, and he takes the hit. He gets hit hard, and he falls on the floor, and so he's bleeding, which explains the original scene that we saw. And then Rios and Talinn rush over because they were, tracking things, and Rios, noted, is calling him Admiral a bunch of times, like pretty obviously, and in front of Renee Picard. And Talinn says, we need to get into a hospital. And Rios says, well, I know a doctor. They have Picard, we see now in the condition that we saw him before. The hospital bed is a hospital bed in Dr. Teresa Ramirez. Oh boy. Dr. Teresa Ramirez's clinic. And she's trying to fuss over Picard, who's going into cardiac arrest. She asks him if he's had any transplants, and Seven says, "Oh yeah, he's had some transplants." And Ramirez is like, "How many transplants has he had?" And Rafi says, "All of them," because they know that he's got a android body or whatever it's called. The doc uses the defibrillator, which is able to get Picard back into normal sinus, but it shorts out when it interacts with his super duper conductor body. And then the doc orders everyone to leave. Meanwhile, Soong returns back to his house, to his daughter, Kore, and he's acting super duper weird, and he's monologuing like a supervillain, like the Soong we know and love. And he's like, I will do anything now that I know what I'm capable of. I can't believe it. All my life's work. I did everything. I poured my passion into you. But the why of it, the why, I must know the why. You were my why, and yet still I will fail you. Still you will die like all the rest. And meanwhile, Corey's like, Dad, what are you talking about? You're freaking me out. What's going on? Do you want to explain yourself? And he's like, no, I don't want to explain myself. And he walks away and closes himself in his room. Back at the clinic, Picard is stable but non-responsive. Teresa is like, I got to go home. Teresa is like, I got to go home and tell my kid that I was gone again without any sort of explanation. Rafi's like, can we go in and see Picard? Teresa's like, sure, you can go see him now. They all run in. But Teresa confronts Rios, and she's like, hey, I've used a defibrillator more times than I can count, and it's never reacted like that. And Rios is like, well, maybe your son here cranked it up or whatever. And she's like, oh, good. You're going to blame a child for something that is obviously much more important. And she's asking point blank, who are you? And he says, okay, you just have to trust me that we are the good guys. And she says, the good guys never have to say that. And then she walks off. A lot of people walking off in this episode. Corey, meanwhile, once her father has locked himself in his room like a sad sack, evil sad sack, thinking evil, plottingly sad sack things, she goes into his lab, looks up his research and stuff about him. She learns that his genetic work with Spearhead and his disgraced reputation for doing genetic work. She sees a bunch of pictures of her when she's young and videos of her when she's young, but she remembers nothing of them. She's wondering what's going on. And then she starts to break into his daily logs when he's talking about, I did this with subject, blah, blah, and all these people that are basically her, but versions of her that did not survive. A Persephone, a Persephata, an Artemis, and a Despoina, I think are the only ones I got. They all died young. They all had stuff. And then we get to his final experiment, and he's sober, kind of crazy-eyed like he was tonight when he came home from the party. And it's like, this is the last one, and you know what? It's a relief. It's a relief to have the last one. Because now I know what I must do. I must do anything and everything to make sure that she survives. And I will do anything to make sure she survives. Anything for Corey. I did it there. I did the gasp.
You did do the gasp. Good job. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to step in and help you.
It's very humid in here, so I think it worked out well. Okay. Meanwhile, the crew is around Picard. Talinn is using her like scanner brain thingy to figure out what's going on Picard. They see that his brain is hyperactive. He's just not awake. Like all the neurons are firing like crazy. And he's trapped in his own mind, she suggests. And she's like, well, you know, I have this technology that allows me to take over the other people's bodies and talk through them and look through them. I could use that in reverse to go inside his mind, take myself in, see into his subconscious, and to help him out. Oh, another trip into somebody's subconscious. Sounds like a good idea. She's like, it's kind of like a jury-rigged mind meld. Rafi is like, no, don't do that. Seems like a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. But Rios is like, hey, the only way we're going to get out of here if this guy wakes up, he knows the most about Renee Picard. We got to get him awake. Seven agrees. Rafi relents, admitting that things are bad in this, quote, bullshit time period, but she wonders how they could get worse. And then we get our final scene of episode 6. We see Girardi from behind, wandering the streets of LA in her red dress. Or is it the Borg Queen? We hear many overlapping voices. Voices.
Sound effects. Insert sound effects.
And here endeth episode 6 of season 2.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You're really going into the Foley there. Episode 6 of season 2 of Star Trek Picard. Let's chat about that.
Let's chat about it.
Ooh.
I say, darling, let's do a quick chat about that.
Yes, let's do. Wow.
That's Foley. That's Foley. I probably won't do it again because they'll start the dogs. They'll actually think there's a genuine owl in the room.
Yeah,
anyway.
Sure. That's not good. Okay, well, crazy episodes, these. Let's see. This is crazy. So yeah, I texted you yesterday or whenever the day we did anyway, the point is, yeah, bonkers. This whole thing with Girardi, we got to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room. So
I told you it was going to get good with Girardi, didn't
Yes. Well,
I'm so
I
glad
should have
we
suspected. The episode's called 2 of 1.
I? 2 of
Not
1.
7
But
of
then,
9. Not Locutus of Borg.
but maybe, I mean, in theory, it could have been 7 who became, injected with the Borg Queen. She was the easy one, if you like.
Yeah, but 7 is the most
Or-
on guard. She would never get that close to a Borg Queen until 7's like would shoot her head off, right?
Or even Locutus, because he's the synth in the group.
Yeah, Locutus is probably the most susceptible, but I think he also has too much. He was the one that told Girardi not to link with her at all. They're both the
True.
people who have been Borgs are like, let's not even flirt with
Yeah, let's
the
not fuck with
possibility of
Borgs.
Borg. But they leave a very sort of like emotionally jacked up Girardi alone on the ship or in the chateau with this incredibly manipulative Borg Queen, billions and billions of lives she's taken over, and all these plots she's hatched, and she's working on Girardi, and she gets her all close to her, even though Girardi shoots her in the neck, and she's able to inject her with the nanotubules. And I don't know. I sort of, like I said to you, I think Girardi becomes the new Borg Queen. I said it.
So, question for you.
Yes.
Do you remember at the beginning of season 2, episode 1? Oh no, episode 2. I think it was episode 2. When the Borg Queen, the new Borg Queen, comes, beams onto the ship, and she's faceless.
Yes.
Do you think that's Girardi?
I sure do.
Okay.
I sure do. Well, I think it's like Girardi, and I don't know if it's fully Girardi or it's like Girardi and the Borg Queen have become super mishmashed. You know what I mean? But like, whatever. I do feel like there's some kind of bending back on itself. Things that I fully believe Girardi's not going to get the Queen out of her head, and they're going to become fully enmeshed, and Girardi's about to go on some sort of Borg spree.
Because I was wondering about the romance with Girardi and Rios. Because the way they talk about their romance during the break, if you like, between season 1 and season 2, it was a bit unresolved, but now Rios is, and I was wondering, because obviously Rios isn't going to stay in the past with Dr. Teresa. So I wondered if he's sort of having a bit of a dalliance. Or is he? I don't know.
He seems to be very taken with the 21st century.
He is.
They're
That's
really
fair.
underscoring that he's like, I love it. It's so intense, and cigars and matches and doctor who built the stuff from the ground up, and he's bonding with Pedro from that one time they were in ice together. I don't know. Is there a possibility he stays back?
Maybe, but do you not think it's a bit like time travel vacation? Like you go on vacation and you're like, oh, this is lovely. I'm having a great time. I could totally live here. But then when you do it, you don't. You don't actually do that. Everyone genuinely likes getting home.
I think that's what Rafi is kind of cautioning him. Like, don't get too swept away in your eat, pray, time travel, love trip. You know what I mean? and be careful. But there's like a whole thing. The doctor, I think it's sort of insinuated that the doctor is single. I don't know that we actually discussed whether or not she is. But there's a thing between her and Picard. It's happening. Owls. And I don't know. I sort of feel like they're keeping the doors open. There's only 3 episodes left, I think, in the whole season. What I would hate to lose Rios for season 3, but if they're bringing back, I mean, this is meta now. If they're bringing back the whole cast and crew and the gang, is it possible they have to sort of like leave some of these side characters to do other things? They're like, we can't have 40 lead actors on this show. So maybe they're like, leave him in the past. Girardi becomes a Borg Queen. Rafi and Seven jump off into space, become Fenris Ranger smugglers for good. Elnor's dead. These are not the things I want to have happen.
It could go in many, many directions.
Yeah.
And that is what our tinfoil time is for.
Okay. It's not tinfoil. She's infected by the Borg Queen. It's tinfoil. I mentioned my theory that that Dr. Girardi becomes a Borg Queen, jumps into a different dimension or universe, and she meets up with Lorca because it's the past, and together they take over the galaxy.
Yeah, but it's not the past, it's the future.
It's It's all the way
I had to figure out what timeline we are.
back before Lorca.
Yes, before.
Right.
Yes.
So she becomes a Borg queen. She becomes essentially immortal.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows about Lorca because his whole existence was wiped from the records. So it's just a pipe dream. I just want Lorca to be back. It's fine. That's tinfoil.
That is tinfoil. You and your obsession with Lorca.
What can I say? Contest is for cakes.
He died. He
fell into a star underneath the ship. That can mean anything. Well, that reminds me of something I forgot to do last episode. We might want to do it before quotable moments or right after. We forgot to do Faith of the Heart for Elnor.
We did. Got it.
Haunted me the whole day. Elnor, when you were a child, then Romulus got attacked, or by the Tsar blew up, and then Mars got attacked by the synthetics or something, and then Picard had to go, and he couldn't read Three Musketeers. So anyway, you came back, and you were a badass, super cool kid, but you spoke your emotions too much, but everyone loved you so much. You're the baby Yoda of Star Trek. But then you got shot in the chest by the magistrate in this really... You had faith of the heart. Choose life.
Oh my God, you cracked me up.
Shall we let's go to quotable moments.
Let's go to quotable moments.
Even I am worried about myself sometimes. Okay, so I have a couple.
Go for it. I seem to have lost my notes, so you crack on.
I'll say the first one I wrote was Soong when he first meets Q, and he says, "Do you have any idea how many crackpots contact?" Hold on, let me take that again. He says, "Do you know how many crackpots contact me about my work? I get everything from basement-dwelling Nazis to rich heiresses who want me to clone their fucking cats." Pretty good. Pretty good.
Very good.
Rafi at the end of episode 6, fine, burrow into his psyche. I mean, what could go wrong? Right before they flash on Dr. Girardi assembling a power.
Indeed.
And I only have one more. It's Q. When Soong is like, "You have me at a disadvantage, and if you have more of the stuff, I'll do whatever you need to do. I'm your hostage, sir." And Q says, "We're all hostages to what we love. The only way to be truly free is to love nothing. And how meaningless would that be?"
Interesting coming from Q.
Very interesting. What's Q about? We should have mentioned that in the chat, but I got obsessed with tinfoil. But what is Q's game here?
I don't know. If we knew that, there would be no more mystery.
If we knew that, there'd be no more mystery. And, I mean, how meaningless would that be?
Indeed, indeed. 2 seconds. And then we'll do next time.
Next time.
Get out.
Get out.
It's not bloody hokey cokey with these two dogs. In, out, in, out.
In, out, in,
Take it
out.
all out.
Get out of there.
Good.
Oh, no.
Good job.
Thank you. Well, I'm working on it. You know, every day. Let's move on to next time.
Next time on Set Phasers.
Oh, no, did the Borg Queen take over our episode? Yes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Set Phasers. We hope you've enjoyed it. There's only a few episodes left of Star Trek Picard. The next time we will be covering episode 7 of season 2 entitled Monsters. I'm sure that's going to be fine, or it's mostly going to be a romp through Picard's head. And a romp through Picard's head. If you liked this episode and would like to hear more episodes of Set Phases, you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. We put out new episodes usually every Monday, except when we're trying to catch up, which we're trying to do right now. But we're basically there. So yeah, Mondays. Find us, yo. Rate and review. Subscribe. Smash that button. Are there still buttons?
No. Yeah, go to patreon.com/setphasers and where we do have a button. You can choose which button you want to be as you join us on our continuing mission to be nerds together. Join us for watch parties, Zoom hangs, book clubs, this is a new thing, and more. Patreon.com/setphasers.
Yes, indeed. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram as Set Phasers Podcast. Please join us. Follow the conversation of all things Trek, Meme Game Strong. It's all Stevie. All I do is sit in my house and sweat.
Sweat?
It's so hot in my apartment today.
Oh, you? I thought you were like being me. I was
Oh,
like,
no.
that's a bit rude.
Oh, yeah, I would never say that about you.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, until next time, I am Stevie Manns.
And I am a hostage of that which I love. And this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.